3 thrones stood empty in the great hall of Valdos. 3 crowns. 3 kings who had waged wars against each other for decades. Yet tonight, they knelt before the same woman. Nerissa looked down at them, her hands trembling at her sides. The cold king with frost in his veins, the golden king with honey on his tongue, the warrior king with blood on his hands. Each had crossed mountains and borders to reach her. Each had sworn to claim her as his queen. But only one had made her feel something she'd buried the night her fated mate marked another. Only one had looked at her like she wasn't broken, and only one would die for loving her. She didn't know it yet, neither did he. The curse that ran through his bloodline had never found a weakness, never found a crack in its ancient armor. For generations, the kings of Valdos had ruled without hearts, without bonds, without the weakness of love. Until her. Choose, the Golden King demanded, his patience finally fracturing. She already has, the Warrior King said quietly, his eyes filled with something like respect, something like loss. The Cold King said nothing. He simply watched her with those pale gray eyes that had once held nothing, nothing at all, and now held everything. Nerissa opened her mouth to speak, to seal all their fates. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The mating ceremony was supposed to be the happiest day of Nerissa's life. She stood at the altar in the great hall of Caelmont, dressed in silver and white, her dark hair braided with moonflowers. The entire pack had gathered to witness the sacred union between her and Joreth, the alpha heir she'd been bonded to since childhood. Their wolves had recognized each other at 13. Their families had celebrated for weeks. Everyone said they were perfect together. Everyone except Joreth himself. Nerissa had noticed the distance growing between them over the past year. The way he avoided her eyes, the way he flinched when their hands touched. She'd told herself it was nerves, pre-mating anxiety, something that would dissolve the moment they completed the bond. She was wrong. The ceremony began with the traditional words, the Alpha Priest invoking the Moon Goddess to bless their union. Nerissa's heart raced as Joreth stepped toward her, his jaw tight, his scent carrying something she couldn't identify. Fear, she realized. He smelled like fear. Joreth, she whispered, what's wrong? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to face the crowd, and Nerissa's blood turned to ice in her veins. I cannot complete this bond, Joreth announced, his voice carrying through the silent hall. The Moon Goddess has shown me my true mate, and it is not Nerissa. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Nerissa stood frozen, unable to process his words. This wasn't possible. They were fated. She could feel the bond between them, fragile as it was, still waiting to be completed. Joreth, she managed, we've been bonded since we were children. The wolves chose each other. You can't just... Wolves can be wrong. His eyes finally met hers, and she saw no love in them, no regret, only relief. I'm sorry, Nerissa, but I choose Linessa. The name hit her like a physical blow. Linessa, her sister. Her perfect, beautiful, golden-haired sister who had always been their mother's favorite, who had always looked at Joreth with something more than sisterly affection. The crowd parted, and there she was, walking toward the altar in a gown of pure white, her eyes downcast in false modesty. Their mother, Helene, walked beside her, and Nerissa saw no surprise on her face. She knew, Nerissa realized. Mother knew this was going to happen. No, Nerissa breathed. Linessa, you can't. He's my fated mate. The bond is clearly mistaken, Helene interrupted smoothly. Joreth has made his choice, Nerissa. Step aside and let your sister take her rightful place. Rightful place. As if Nerissa was the interloper. As if she hadn't spent 10 years believing Joreth was her future. I won't, Nerissa said, her voice stronger now. Joreth, Look at me. Feel the bond. It's still there. I know you can feel it. For one moment she saw doubt cross his features. His wolf whined beneath the surface, reaching for hers. The bond pulsed between them, desperate and dying. Then Linessa touched his arm and his expression hardened. I reject you, Nerissa of Caelmont, Joreth said formally. I sever the bond between our wolves. I choose another. The pain was instantaneous. Nerissa doubled over as the bond snapped, as something vital inside her tore apart. She heard herself scream but couldn't stop it. Her wolf howled in agony, clawing at her insides, trying to hold on to something that was already gone. Through tear-blurred vision, she watched Joreth turn to Linessa, watched him tilt her head back, watched his fangs descend. And then, he marked her. The claiming bite that should have been Nerissa's, given to her sister, in front of everyone she'd ever known. She collapsed to her knees, the broken bond bleeding inside her like an open wound. The whispers started immediately. Poor thing. How humiliating. Always knew something was wrong with her. Imagine being rejected for your own sister. Nerissa wanted to die, wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole, wanted to run and never stop running. But then the great doors of the hall burst open. 3 scents hit her simultaneously. Power like she'd never felt before. 3 distinct signatures that made every wolf in the room drop their heads in instinctive submission. Nerissa forced herself to look up. 3 men stood in the doorway. 3 alphas whose presence eclipsed everything else in the room, including her pain. The first was golden, beautiful, dressed in silks that cost more than Caelmont's entire treasury. He smiled like a man who had never been denied anything. The second was massive, scarred, wearing battle leathers and carrying a sword at his hip. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. The third was cold. That was the only word for him. Pale blonde hair, gray eyes like frozen lakes, a face carved from winter itself. He looked at the scene before him, at Nerissa on her knees, at the fresh mark on Linessa's neck, and his expression didn't change at all. We heard there was a mating ceremony tonight, the Golden One said, his voice smooth as silk. It seems we've arrived just in time. Who are you? Joreth demanded, stepping in front of Linessa protectively. How dare you interrupt? Interrupt what? The scarred one laughed, the sound harsh. A rejection? We've saved this woman from witnessing more of your cowardice. You don't understand, Helene interjected quickly. This was the moon goddess's will. Joreth was meant for Linessa, not the moon goddess. The cold one finally spoke, and his voice silenced every other sound in the hall. Did not send us here for your younger daughter. Nerissa's breath caught. All 3 of them turned to look at her. 3 alpha kings. 3 of the most powerful wolves on the continent. Looking at her. We came for Nerissa, the Golden One said softly. And we're not leaving without her. The hall erupted into chaos, but Nerissa barely heard it. She was still on her knees, still bleeding internally from the severed bond, still trying to comprehend what was happening. 3 alpha kings. She recognized them now. Every wolf child learned their names, their territories, their legends. King Aurelion of Salanthus, the Golden King. Ruler of the wealthiest kingdom in the realm, known for his charm, his cunning, and his collection of beautiful things. King Gidrin of Kethrin, the warrior king. Commander of the largest army, victor of 100 battles, scarred by wars he'd won through sheer brutality. King Thiran of Valdos, the Cold King, the most mysterious of the 3. His kingdom lay in the frozen north, and rumors said he'd never smiled, never laughed, never shown a single human emotion in his 30 years of life. And they had come for her. This is absurd, Helene sputtered. Nerissa is bond broken. She's worthless as a mate now. Why would any king want... Careful. Gidron interrupted, his hand moving to his sword. You speak of the woman we've traveled weeks to claim. Choose your next words wisely. Helene paled and fell silent. Aurelion stepped forward, extending a hand to Nerissa. My lady, allow me to help you rise. You shouldn't be kneeling before anyone, least of all the man who just proved himself unworthy of you. His touch was warm, almost too warm. Nerissa let him pull her to her feet, her legs unsteady. I don't understand, she managed. Why would you want me? You could have anyone. Princesses, noble daughters, women who aren't... She swallowed hard. Broken. Broken, Thyron repeated. It was only one word, but something in his tone made her look at him. His gray eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You believe yourself broken, he said flatly, because a lesser wolf couldn't recognize your worth. With respect, Your Majesty, Jorith cut in, his voice shaking but defiant. Nerissa has no special worth. She's ordinary. Her wolf is weak. Her bloodline is unremarkable. I rejected her because... We did not ask for your opinion, Thyron said, and the temperature in the hall dropped several degrees. Actual frost began forming on the windows. Nor do we require it. You had your chance. You chose poorly. That is no longer our concern. Jorith's face went white, but he wisely said nothing more. My lady Nerissa, Aurelion said smoothly, drawing her attention back to him. I'll be direct. I want you as my queen. Solanthus has wealth beyond measure, comfort beyond imagining. You would want for nothing. Every luxury, every pleasure, and every revenge you could dream of. I would lay them at your feet. Revenge, Nerissa repeated quietly. Aurelion smiled. Imagine returning here in a year, draped in gold, wearing my crown. Imagine your sister's face when she sees what you've become. Wouldn't that be satisfying? It would. Nerissa couldn't deny the dark appeal of it, but something in his smile made her uneasy. It was too practiced, too perfect. And you? She turned to Gidron. What do you offer? The warrior king met her eyes directly. No games, no manipulation. I offer you respect, Nerissa. You stood at that altar and held your ground even as your world collapsed. You didn't beg. You didn't grovel. That takes strength. He inclined his head. My seers sensed something powerful awakening in Caelmont. When I arrived and saw you, I understood what they meant. I would be honored to have such a woman rule beside me. His words were genuine. She could smell no deception on him. Of the three, he seemed the most straightforward, the most honest. Finally, she turned to Thyron. The cold king hadn't moved from his position near the door. He stood apart from the others, his expression revealing nothing, his scent oddly muted. Most alphas projected their emotions constantly, their wolves broadcasting dominance and desire. But Thyron was like a frozen lake, his surface still and impenetrable. And what do you offer, Your Majesty? Nerissa asked. Nothing, Thyron said. The word hung in the air. Aurelion laughed disbelievingly. Gidron raised an eyebrow. Nothing? Nerissa repeated. I offer no wealth to tempt you, Thyron continued, his voice flat. No promises of revenge to manipulate you, no flattery to seduce you. I offer only a contract, a political alliance. You will be queen. You will have power, protection, and autonomy. In return, you will produce heirs when the time comes. That's all? That is all. His eyes held hers without wavering. I will not love you, Nerissa. I am incapable of it. I will not pretend otherwise to win you. If you come with me, you will have a husband who expects nothing from your heart and demands nothing of your emotions. You will be free. Free. The word echoed through her shattered soul. No love, no bond, no risk of being rejected again, because there would be nothing to reject. Just a cold, practical arrangement with a man who couldn't hurt her because he couldn't feel anything at all. It should have sounded terrible. It should have horrified her. Instead, it sounded like mercy. "Why?" Nerissa whispered. "Why do any of you want me?" "The truth." Aurelion opened his mouth, but Theron spoke first. "Because you are more than you know," he said simply. "And we are not the fools your former mate is." Silence stretched through the hall. Nerissa looked at her mother, whose face was twisted with fury and something else. Fear. Why would her mother be afraid? She looked at Linessa, still bearing Jorith's fresh mark, her expression smug but uncertain. She looked at Jorith himself, who couldn't meet her eyes. And then she looked at the three kings who had traveled across kingdoms to claim a woman everyone else considered worthless. "I choose King Theron of Valdos," Nerissa said. Aurelion's smile vanished. Gidrin nodded slowly, accepting her decision with grace. "And Theron?" Theron's expression didn't change at all, but a shadow crossed those frozen eyes. Something she couldn't name. "Then we leave tonight," he said. "There's nothing for you here." He was right. There was nothing left for her in Caelmont. Nothing but pain and humiliation and a family that had betrayed her. As she walked toward the cold king, her mother's voice rang out behind her. "Nerissa, wait. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what he is. What his bloodline carries." Nerissa paused but didn't turn around. "Whatever he is," she said quietly. "He came for me when you were ready to watch me be destroyed. That's all I need to know." She walked out of the great hall without looking back, but her mother's words followed her into the cold night air. What his bloodline carries. What did that mean? And why did the cold king's scent carry no emotion at all? The journey to Valdos took 7 days. 7 days of traveling through increasingly frozen landscapes, of watching the green give way to white, of feeling the temperature drop degree by degree. 7 days of riding beside a king who spoke perhaps a dozen words total, whose presence beside her was like sitting next to a glacier. Theron's personal guard surrounded them, silent men and women whose loyalty was evident in every movement. They watched Nerissa with curiosity but not hostility, which was more than she'd expected. On the third night, camped in a forest of ice-covered pines, Nerissa finally gathered the courage to approach Theron, where he sat alone by the fire. His pale eyes reflected the flames, but he didn't seem to feel its warmth. "May I sit?" she asked. He gestured to the space beside him without speaking. Nerissa settled onto the frozen log, pulling her furs tighter. Even bundled in the warmest clothing his servants had provided, she was cold. But Theron wore only a thin shirt, open at the collar, as if the temperature meant nothing to him. "You don't feel it," she said. "The cold." "No." "Is that part of your bloodline? What my mother mentioned?" For a long moment, Theron didn't answer. The fire crackled between them, casting shadows across his angular features. "My bloodline is cursed," he said finally. "Every king of Valdos has carried it for 12 generations. We are born without the ability to feel." Nerissa frowned. Without the ability to feel cold? Without the ability to feel anything? He turned those gray eyes on her, and she shivered at their emptiness. Emotion, warmth, connection, the mate bond that other wolves take for granted. We cannot experience any of it. We are, as your kind would say, heartless. The word hung in the air like frost. "That's why you said you couldn't love me," Nerissa realized slowly. "Not that you wouldn't. That you couldn't." "Correct. I am physically incapable of it. My wolf recognizes no mate. My heart feels no affection. I rule Valdos through logic and strategy. Nothing more." He paused. "I told you this before you chose me. I won't have you claim deception later." "I'm not claiming anything." Nerissa studied his profile, searching for any crack in that frozen exterior. But if you can't feel anything, why did you come for me? Why did you want a queen at all? You could have continued ruling alone. Because I require heirs. And because... He stopped abruptly. Because what? Thyron stood, turning away from her. Get some rest. We reach Valdos tomorrow. He walked away into the darkness and Nerissa was left staring after him, more confused than ever. Because what? What had he been about to say? The next morning, a messenger arrived bearing Aurelion's seal. Thyron read the letter in silence, then handed it to Nerissa without comment. The message was brief and chilling. You've made a mistake choosing the frozen corpse over me. I am not a man who accepts rejection gracefully. Enjoy your wedding, Lady Nerissa. I'll be seeing you soon. Sincerely, King Aurelion of Salanthus. He's threatening us, Nerissa said, her hands trembling slightly. He's posturing. Thyron took the letter back and fed it to the fire. Aurelion has always believed he's entitled to whatever catches his eye. He'll learn otherwise. And if he doesn't? If he actually comes for me? Thyron met her eyes, and for one brief moment she saw something stir in those frozen depths. Something that looked almost like protectiveness. Then he'll discover why no army has ever breached Valdos's walls, he said quietly, and why no one threatens what belongs to me. What belongs to me? The words sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. They reached Valdos as the sun set, painting the snow-covered kingdom in shades of gold and crimson. The castle rose from the frozen landscape like a monument to winter itself, all white stone and silver spires, breathtakingly beautiful and utterly cold. The people lined the streets to watch their king's return, and Nerissa felt their eyes on her. Curious, assessing, wondering who this woman was that their heartless king had chosen. Inside the castle, servants moved with quiet efficiency, preparing chambers and drawing baths. Nerissa was led to a suite of rooms more luxurious than anything she'd ever seen, the walls hung with white silk, the bed piled with furs. She was examining the view from her window, the endless white expanse stretching to the horizon, when a knock came at her door. "Enter," she called, expecting a servant. Instead, an elderly woman stepped inside, her silver hair braided around her head like a crown, her eyes sharp and knowing. "Lady Nerissa," the woman said, "I am Maven, the king's advisor. We need to talk." Something in her tone made Nerissa's stomach tighten. "About what?" Maven closed the door behind her and lowered her voice. "About why you're really here. About what the king hasn't told you." She stepped closer. "And about the curse that will kill him if he ever makes the mistake of loving you." The words hit Nerissa like a blow. "What do you mean, kill him?" Maven's expression was grave. "The curse on the Valdos bloodline isn't simply the inability to feel, my lady. It's a protection. The ancient king who made the pact chose to sacrifice emotion to ensure his line would never be weakened by love, never be vulnerable to heartbreak or manipulation through the mate bond. That sounds like a blessing, not a curse." "The blessing became a curse when the witch who cast it added a failsafe," Maven continued. "Should any king of Valdos ever somehow break through the emotional barrier and actually feel love, truly feel it, the curse completes itself. His heart freezes solid. He dies within days." Nerissa felt the color drain from her face. "That's impossible. He said he can't feel anything. If he can't feel, he can't fall in love." "For 12 generations that's been true." Maven's eyes bored into hers. "But you, Lady Nerissa, are not like other women. You carry something within you, something that's been hidden, suppressed, but not destroyed." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Maven reached out and touched Nerissa's hand, and a spark passed between them. "Your mother bound your abilities when you were a child. She's been feeding you suppressants your entire life, but I can sense what lies beneath." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You carry the blood of the first Luna, my lady, the power to create and destroy mate bonds, the power to make any wolf feel connected to you, whether they want to or not. The room spun around Nerissa. That's not possible. My mother said I was ordinary. My wolf is weak. I've never... Your wolf is not weak. Your wolf is caged. Maven released her hand. And now that you're away from your mother, away from whatever she's been putting in your food and drink, that cage is going to start opening. Nerissa thought of her mother's fear when she left with Thiran, her warnings about his bloodline, her desperate attempt to stop her from leaving, not to protect Nerissa, to keep her trapped, to keep her power contained. Why are you telling me this? Nerissa asked, her voice shaking. Because you need to understand the danger you're both in, Maven said. If your power awakens fully, if you accidentally forge a bond with the king, if you make him feel something, it will kill him. And I've served Thiran since he was a boy. I will not watch him die, because a girl who doesn't understand her own nature broke through his walls. Nerissa sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. She had a hidden power. Her mother had been suppressing it for years. And if that power awakened, if she somehow made the cold king feel love, she would kill him. What do I do? She whispered. Maven's expression softened slightly. Keep your distance. Guard your heart. Do not let him in, and do not let yourself care for him, for both your sakes. She left without another word, and Nerissa sat alone in her beautiful frozen prison, realizing that she had escaped one trap only to walk into another. Somewhere in the castle, the cold king who couldn't feel anything was preparing for a wedding to a woman who could make anyone feel everything. And neither of them knew that fate had already set its pieces in motion. The wedding was to take place 3 days after Nerissa's arrival in Valdos. 3 days of avoiding Thiran as much as possible. 3 days of Maven's warning echoing in her mind. 3 days of feeling something stirring deep inside her, something that had been asleep her entire life and was now slowly, terrifyingly waking up. She could feel it in her wolf, the creature that had always been quiet, submissive, barely present, was stretching inside her like a beast emerging from hibernation. Her senses were sharper. Colors seemed brighter. Scents carried more information than they ever had before. And Thiran's scent, that muted, frozen nothingness, was starting to crack. She'd caught hints of something beneath it. Just whispers. A trace of pine and winter storms, of ancient power held under impossible restraint. It made her wolf restless in ways she didn't understand. Keep your distance. Guard your heart. Easier said than done when servants kept bringing her to him for wedding preparations, when she had to stand beside him as the court tailor measured them both, when his cold hand occasionally brushed hers and sent sparks racing up her arm. On the second day, something strange happened. She'd been sitting by the fire in her chambers, thinking about Thiran, about the impossible situation they were both in. Her emotions had been running high, frustration and fear and something warmer she didn't want to name. The flames in the hearth suddenly surged, leaping twice their normal height before settling back down. Nerissa stared at the fire, her pulse quickening. Had she done that? Was this part of her awakening power? She didn't mention it to anyone, but she watched herself more carefully after that. On the morning of the wedding, Nerissa stood before a mirror, while servants dressed her in a gown of ice blue silk and silver embroidery. A crown of frozen crystals was placed on her dark hair, and when she looked at her reflection, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a queen. She looked like she belonged here. The thought terrified her. A knock came at the door, and Maven entered, her expression tense. "The kings have arrived," she said quietly. Nerissa's stomach dropped. Kings? Plural? Aurelion and Gidron both requested permission to attend the ceremony. Thiran couldn't refuse without causing a diplomatic incident. Maven moved closer, lowering her voice. "Be careful today. Aurelion is planning something. I can feel it. What kind of something? I don't know yet. Just stay close to Thyron. Whatever else he is, he will protect you. The great hall of Valdos had been transformed for the occasion. White flowers cascaded from every surface, their petals dusted with actual frost that glittered in the candlelight. The nobility of Valdos filled the pews, dressed in shades of silver and pale blue, their faces curious as they watched their heartless king prepare to take a bride. Nerissa walked the long aisle alone, just as she had in Caelmont. But this time, the man waiting for her at the altar hadn't rejected her. This time, he'd chosen her. Even if he could never love her. Thyron stood motionless in formal black, his pale hair pulled back from his angular face. He watched her approach with those empty gray eyes, and Nerissa searched desperately for any sign of feeling. Nothing. Just winter. She took her place beside him, and the officiant began the ceremony. We gather today to witness the union of King Thyron of Valdos and Lady Nerissa of Caelmont. Nerissa tried to focus on the words, but movement in her peripheral vision drew her attention. Aurelion sat in the front row, dressed in gold that seemed to glow against the white surroundings. He caught her eye and smiled, and the expression made her skin crawl. Beside him, Gidron sat with arms crossed, his scarred face unreadable. When their eyes met, he inclined his head slightly. Respect? Acknowledgement. Nothing threatening. But Aurelion. If any present know of a reason these two should not be joined, the officiant intoned, speak now, or forever, hold your peace. Aurelion stood in. The entire hall gasped. Thyron went rigid beside her, and for the first time, Nerissa felt something emanate from him. Cold. Actual, physical cold that made the air around them frost. I know of a reason, Aurelion said pleasantly. The lady was promised to me first. That is a lie, Nerissa said, her voice cutting through the whispers. I chose King Thyron freely. You were present. You heard my decision. Ah, but you made that decision under duress. Aurelion spread his hands innocently. You'd just been rejected. You were in pain. You weren't thinking clearly. Surely a choice made in such a state cannot be considered binding. The lady's choice was clear. Gidron's deep voice rumbled. He hadn't stood, but his hand rested on his sword hilt. I was present as well. She chose Thyron. Accept it with grace, Aurelion, or accept it without. But accept it. Aurelion's smile didn't waver, but something dangerous glinted in his eyes. I'm simply concerned for the lady's well-being. Does she know what she's marrying? Does she understand the curse that runs through Valdos's bloodline? The whispers intensified. The nobles of Valdos exchanged uncomfortable glances. Enough. Thyron's voice was quiet, but it silenced everyone instantly. The temperature dropped further, frost creeping across the floor, climbing the walls. You were permitted to attend as a courtesy. If you cannot conduct yourself appropriately, you will be removed. Removed? Aurelion laughed. By whom? Your frozen guards? Your emotionless soldiers? He turned to address the crowd. This man cannot feel, cannot love, cannot even experience basic human connection. And you're going to let him claim this woman? Trap her in a marriage as cold as his heart? I chose this marriage, Nerissa said firmly. She stepped forward, placing herself between Aurelion and Thyron. I chose it knowing exactly what it was, and I would choose it again over any alternative you could offer. Aurelion's expression finally cracked, rage bleeding through the golden facade. You'll regret that, little wolf. When you're freezing in his bed, wishing for warmth he can never give you, you'll remember that I offered you everything. You offered me a cage lined with silk, Nerissa replied. He offered me honesty. I know which I prefer. For a long moment, Aurelion simply stared at her. Then he smoothed his features back into that practiced smile. Very well. Enjoy your Ice King, Lady Nerissa. He swept toward the doors, pausing at the threshold. But remember, winter doesn't last forever, and I am very, very patient. The doors closed behind him and the hall erupted into nervous chatter. "Continue," Thyron commanded, and the officiant scrambled to obey. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Vows were exchanged, rings placed on fingers. When Thyron's hand closed around hers to slide on the band of white gold, she gasped at the cold of his skin. But beneath that cold, just for an instant, she felt something else. A pulse of heat. A flicker of something that shouldn't exist. She looked up at him sharply, but his face revealed nothing. "You may now claim your bride," the officiant announced. Unlike human weddings, wolf ceremonies ended with a claiming bite, a mark that would bind them together. But that would require Thyron to bite her neck, to taste her blood, to forge a connection that could trigger exactly what Maven had warned against. Nerissa's pulse raced. What would they do? The whole court was watching. Thyron solved the problem by taking her hand and lifting it to his lips. He pressed a cold kiss to her knuckles, then turned her wrist and let his lips brush her pulse point. The touch sent electricity racing through her entire body. Her wolf surged forward with a sound that was almost a howl, straining toward him. Heat rose in her chest, and for a terrifying moment she thought she saw steam rise where his cold lips met her warm skin. No, 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 no. She yanked her hand back, breathing hard. Thyron's eyes met hers, and for one terrifying moment, she saw something shift in his expression, something that looked almost like confusion. "The claiming will be completed in private," he announced to the crowd, "as is traditional for Valdos kings." The nobles nodded, accepting this. But Nerissa saw Maven in the crowd, her face pale with fear. What just happened? That touch, that simple brush of lips against skin, had awakened something. She could feel her power stirring, reaching, trying to forge a connection with the man beside her. And she could have sworn, just for an instant, that he felt it too. The feast afterward was a blur of faces and congratulations. Nerissa smiled until her cheeks ached, accepted well wishes from nobles whose names she immediately forgot. Thyron sat beside her, silent and cold, but she noticed his hand occasionally moving to his chest, as if something there was bothering him. As the night wore on and the guests grew drunk on winter wine, Gidron approached their table. He bowed formally to Thyron, then turned to Nerissa. "My lady, I wanted to offer my congratulations in person." His scarred face softened slightly. "You made the right choice. Thyron is many things, but he is honorable. He will protect you." "Thank you, King Gidron." He glanced at Thyron, something unreadable passing between the two men. "Take care of her, Thyron. She's stronger than she knows. My seers weren't wrong about that." He paused, his voice dropping. "And when she realizes what she truly is, when that power fully wakes, well, I hope I'm there to see it." He walked away before Nerissa could ask what he meant. "What did he mean by that?" she asked Thyron quietly. "What I truly am?" Thyron's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Gidron sees more than most. It's why he's survived so many battles." He stood, offering his hand. "Come. It's time. Time. For the wedding night. For the private claiming that the court expected." Nerissa took his cold hand and let him lead her from the hall, hyper-aware of every eye following them. She was married to the cold king now, and something inside her was waking up that could destroy them both. The king's chambers were larger than Nerissa's entire family home in Caelmont. A massive bed dominated the center of the room, draped in white furs and silver silks. A fire roared in the hearth, but it did nothing to warm the space. The cold here came from the walls themselves, from the stones that had absorbed centuries of Valdos winters, or perhaps from the man who stood with his back to her, staring into the flames. Thyron had removed his formal jacket. In just his white shirt she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid line of his spine. He looked like a man preparing for battle, not a wedding night. We should discuss expectations, he said without turning around. Expectations? The court believes we will complete the claiming tonight. That I will bite you, mark you, forge a bond. He finally turned to face her, and his expression was carefully blank. I will not do that. Relief, and something that felt uncomfortably like disappointment warred in Neresa's chest. Because of your curse. If you mark me, if you form a bond, I cannot form a bond. I told you this. My wolf recognizes no mate. He moved toward her slowly, and despite his words, there was something almost predatory in his gait. But the claiming bite would create a physical connection. My blood mixed with yours. Your scent permanently altered to carry mine. And that's dangerous? That is unknown. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his skin. No Valdos king has ever marked a queen. We take wives for heirs, nothing more. The claiming has always been symbolic only. Nerissa swallowed hard. So what happens tonight? I will not force anything on you. His gray eyes held hers steadily. If you wish to sleep alone, I will have a separate chamber prepared. If you prefer to maintain appearances and share this room, I will not touch you without your consent. It was everything she should have wanted to hear. Distance, safety. No risk of her power awakening and killing him. But standing here, watching the firelight play across his frozen features, Nerissa felt something she hadn't expected. She didn't want distance. And if I consent? She heard herself say. Something shifted in Thyron's eyes. That same change she'd seen at the ceremony, gone before she could identify it. Then I will give you whatever you ask for, he said quietly, within the limits of what I am able to provide. What he was able to provide: pleasure without emotion, touch without connection, a transaction, just like everything else in this marriage. Nerissa should have said no, should have taken the separate chamber and locked the door between them. Maven's warning screamed in her mind, but her wolf was howling, her blood was singing. And the power that had been dormant her entire life was reaching for him like a flower reaching for the sun. Just tonight, she told herself. One night to understand what this is. Then I'll keep my distance. She reached up and began unfastening the clasps of her wedding gown. Thyron went absolutely still. His eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that belied his claims of emptiness. What are you doing? He asked, his voice lower than before. Consenting. The gown slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet in a whisper of silk. She stood before him in nothing but a thin shift, her skin pebbling in the cold air. You said you would give me whatever I asked for. I did. Then I'm asking. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the winter that lived in his bones. Show me what you can provide. For a long, suspended moment, Thyron didn't move. His expression remained frozen, his body rigid with control. Then his hands came up and gripped her waist, and the cold of his touch made her gasp. You should not have done this, he murmured, but he was pulling her closer, not pushing her away. You should have taken the separate chamber. Probably. I cannot give you warmth. I cannot give you tenderness. I am exactly as empty as I warned you. Then stop talking, Nerissa breathed, and show me. His mouth found hers, and the cold was shocking. Like kissing winter itself, like pressing her lips to fresh snow. Her wolf keened inside her, confused and aroused and desperate. But beneath the cold, buried so deep she might have imagined it, was heat. Thyron kissed her with a precision that should have felt mechanical, but somehow didn't. His hands mapped her body through the thin fabric of her shift, learning her curves with methodical attention. Every touch was deliberate, purposeful. And yet, his breathing changed, his grip tightened. When she slid her hands beneath his shirt and pressed her warm palms against his frozen chest, he made a sound. Low, almost pained, like something cracking deep inside him. "You're so warm," he muttered against her mouth. "I didn't know anything could be this warm." "Is it too much?" "No." The word came out rough, almost desperate. "No, it's—" He didn't finish. Instead, he lifted her as if she weighed nothing and carried her to the bed, laying her down on the furs with surprising gentleness. The shift was removed with careful precision. Nerissa shivered as the cold air kissed her bare skin, but Thyron's hands were already there, stroking, exploring, leaving trails of frost that made her nerve endings sing. "Tell me if you want to stop," he said, positioning himself above her. His gray eyes looked almost silver in the firelight, and there was something in them she'd never seen before. Something that looked almost like reverence. "Tell me if the cold is too much." "It's not." She pulled him down to her, gasping at the shock of his frozen skin against her heated flesh. The contrast was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Ice and fire meeting, creating steam. "Don't stop. Please don't stop." What followed was nothing like Nerissa had expected. She'd anticipated mechanical efficiency. A transaction, as he'd described. Bodies coming together for the purpose of producing heirs, nothing more. But Thyron touched her like she was precious, like she was the first warm thing he'd ever encountered, and he couldn't quite believe she was real. His cold hands traced every inch of her skin with something that felt alarmingly like wonder. When they finally came together, the sensation overwhelmed every thought. The cold inside her, filling her, should have been unbearable. Instead, it was completion, like two halves of something whole finally meeting. Her wolf surged forward with a howl of recognition. No, no, this wasn't supposed to happen. But Nerissa couldn't stop it. Couldn't stop the power rising inside her like a tide. Couldn't stop the connection forming between them. Invisible threads weaving around their souls, binding them together. Thyron felt it too. His eyes went wide, his body freezing above her. "What is this?" he gasped. "What's happening?" "I don't know." But she did know. This was exactly what Maven had warned her about. Her Luna bloodline awakening. Her power reaching out to forge a bond with the man inside her body. The threads tightened, solidified, and for one brilliant, terrible moment Nerissa felt everything Thyron felt. Nothing. Vast, echoing emptiness. A void where emotions should have been. The curse that had stolen his ability to feel, to connect, to love. But beneath that, nothing. Something woke. Something small and fragile and fighting desperately to be born. Something that felt like warmth. Then Thyron tore himself away. He stumbled back from the bed, his chest heaving, one hand pressed against his heart. Frost was spreading across his skin, climbing his arms, creeping up his neck. "What did you do?" His voice was different, no longer flat and empty. There was something in it now. Fear, confusion, pain. "What did you do to me?" "I didn't mean to." Nerissa sat up, pulling the furs around her. "Thyron, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would—" "I felt something." He stared at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. "For a moment I felt warm. I've never—" He looked at her, and his eyes were wild. "That's not possible. The curse is absolute. I cannot feel. I cannot—" He doubled over suddenly, a groan escaping his lips. The frost on his skin spread further, climbing toward his face. "Thyron!" Nerissa scrambled from the bed, rushing toward him. "What's happening?" "Stay back." He held up a hand, and she felt the cold radiating from him intensify. "Don't touch me. If you touch me again, if this happens again—" "If what happens again?" He met her eyes, and what she saw there made her stomach plummet. Terror. Pure, absolute terror, from a man who shouldn't be able to feel fear. "The curse is activating," He whispered. I felt something, and now it's punishing me. He pressed his hand harder against his chest. My heart. Something's wrong with my heart. Maven told me. Neresa's voice shook. She told me that if you ever felt love, truly felt it, the curse would freeze your heart. That you would die. Thyron stared at her. She told you, he repeated slowly. Before the wedding. Yes. And you still chose to... He gestured at the bed. You still let this happen? I didn't think I could actually make you feel anything. You said you were incapable of it. I was. The frost had reached his jaw now, creeping toward his cheeks. Until you. Nerissa reached for him instinctively, but he flinched away. Don't. His voice was strained. The further away you are, the less I feel. The less I feel, the slower the curse progresses. He forced himself to straighten, though she could see it cost him. I need to think. I need to understand what's happening. You. He swallowed hard. You stay here. I'll have Maven attend to you. Thyron. Don't follow me. He walked out of the chamber, frost trailing in his wake, leaving Nerissa alone in the ruined wedding bed. She'd done exactly what Maven warned her not to do. She'd made the cold king feel. And now, he was dying because of it. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Nerissa staying in her chambers. 3 weeks of seeing Thyran only at formal dinners where they sat at opposite ends of a long table. 3 weeks of feeling the fragile bond between them stretching thinner and thinner. The frost on his skin hadn't progressed beyond his jaw since that night. But it hadn't receded either. It stayed there, a constant reminder of what she'd done, visible to everyone in the court. The whispers were vicious. She's killing him. The bond-broken girl brought her curse here. She should be sent away before it's too late. Nerissa heard them all. She couldn't blame them. They weren't wrong. Maven visited her daily, running tests, asking questions about her power and how it had manifested. The old woman was convinced that understanding Nerissa's abilities was the key to everything. Your Luna bloodline is stronger than anything I've sensed in generations, Maven said on the 15th day. The first Luna could forge mate bonds between any wolves she chose. She could also sever them. I've already severed one bond involuntarily, Nerissa said bitterly. That's what ended my engagement. Jorith felt the mate bond snapping, and he assumed the moon goddess was telling him I wasn't his true mate. But it was me. I rejected him before he rejected me, and I didn't even know it. Which means you have the power to do it deliberately. Maven's eyes were intense. If you could learn to control your abilities, you could sever the bond that's forming between you and Thyron. You could save him. Or I could kill him faster by trying and failing. That's a possibility. Maven didn't sugarcoat it. But doing nothing is killing him too. Slowly, yes, but inevitably. The curse has tasted emotion now. It won't rest until it's finished. Nerissa stared out the window at the frozen landscape. Somewhere in the castle, Thyron was suffering because of her. Because she hadn't been able to control herself. Because one night in his arms had been worth more to her than his life. No, that wasn't true. I need to see him, she said. That's not advisable. I don't care what's advisable. Nerissa turned to face Maven. I've spent 3 weeks hiding like a coward while he's out there with frost creeping toward his heart. I can't save him from a distance. I need to understand what happened between us. I need to learn how to control this power, and I can't do any of that locked in this room. Maven studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed. He takes dinner alone in his study most nights. He won't come to the hall anymore because he doesn't want the court to see how much the frost has spread. It's spreading? When he's alone, when there are no distractions, he thinks about you. Maven's voice was gentle. And when he thinks about you, he feels something. And when he feels something, the curse progresses. Yes. Nerissa's throat tightened. He was thinking about her. Despite everything, despite the danger, despite 3 weeks of distance, she still affected him. Because he cares. Her wolf whispered. He's starting to care about us. That night, Nerissa made her way to Thyron's study. The guards let her pass without question. She was still technically their queen, even if she was also apparently their king's executioner. She found him at his desk, surrounded by documents, his face illuminated by candlelight. The frost had spread further than she'd realized. It covered his entire jaw now, creeping up his cheeks toward his eyes. He looked beautiful and dying. "I told you to stay away," he said without looking up. "I know." Nerissa closed the door behind her. "I've never been very good at following orders." A ghost of something that might have been amusement crossed his features. It was more expression than she'd seen from him in weeks. "You're making it worse," he said quietly. "Every time you're near me, I feel something. And every time I feel something, the frost grows." "Then why haven't you sent me away?" Nerissa moved closer, settling into the chair across from his desk. "If my presence is killing you, why keep me in the castle?" Thyron finally looked at her, and her breath caught at what she saw in his eyes. They weren't empty anymore. They were full of something she couldn't name, something that looked like pain and wonder and fear all tangled together. "Because I don't want you to leave," he said simply. "And wanting things is new for me. I find I'm unwilling to give it up, even if it kills me." Nerissa's heart cracked. "That's the most selfish thing you've ever said." "I know. I've never been selfish before either." He almost smiled. "You're teaching me all kinds of terrible habits." She shouldn't touch him. She knew she shouldn't. But she reached across the desk anyway and laid her hand over his. His skin was ice against hers, but he didn't pull away. "Tell me about the curse," Nerissa said softly. "Everything. I want to understand." So he did. He told her about his ancestor, King Werewolf, who had watched his father destroyed by a mate who betrayed him, who had seen how love made wolves weak, vulnerable, easy to manipulate, who had sought out a dark witch and made a bargain, remove his ability to feel, and make that protection hereditary. The witch agreed, Thyron said, but she added a clause Werewolf didn't anticipate. Should any of his descendants ever break through the emotional barrier and actually feel love, the curse would complete itself. Their hearts would freeze solid within days. Why would she add that? Because she was in love with Werewolf herself. Thyron's voice was flat. He'd rejected her advances. She wanted to ensure that if he couldn't love her, he would never love anyone. And neither would any of his line. That's monstrous. That's what happens when love becomes obsession. He turned his hand over beneath hers, their palms pressing together. For 12 generations, the clause was irrelevant. No Valdos king ever felt anything. We were exactly as emotionless as Werewolf wanted. Cold, logical, efficient rulers. Until me. Until you. His gray eyes held hers. "I don't understand it, Nerissa. I've been with women before. I've had mistresses, political encounters. Nothing ever touched me. But you?" He shook his head slowly. "The moment you walked into that ceremony hall in Calemont, something changed. Something cracked." "My power," Nerissa said. "Maven thinks my Luna bloodline can force connections. That I accidentally started forming a bond with you the moment we met. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're simply the first person in my life who deserved to be felt." The words hung in the cold air between them. "Thyron." Nerissa's voice broke. "If I could take it back, if I could make you stop feeling, would you?" The question stopped her. Would she? If she could sever the bond, remove whatever connection was growing between them, save his life at the cost of returning him to that vast emptiness she'd felt inside him? She thought about the look in his eyes now. The pain, yes, but also the wonder. the discovery of feelings he'd never experienced, the terrible gift of actually being alive after 30 years of nothing. "I don't know," she admitted. "Neither do I." Thyron's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I should want to survive. Self-preservation is logical. But these past 3 weeks, even as the frost spread, even as my heart grew colder, I kept thinking about you. About how you tasted. About how warm you were in my arms. About how, for one moment, I understood what everyone else has always had." Tears were streaming down Neresa's face. She didn't know when she'd started crying. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "No, it isn't." Thyron released her hand and stood, moving around the desk to kneel before her. His frosted face was level with hers, so close she could see the crystals of ice forming in his eyelashes. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "Before it's too late. Before the frost takes my voice or my mind or whatever it takes next. Don't say that. I'm dying, Nerissa. We both know it. And I've discovered that dying men want to speak truth." He reached up and cradled her jaw in his frozen hands. "I didn't choose you at that auction because of political advantage, or because I thought you were safe. I chose you because something in me recognized something in you. Something that called to me despite the curse, despite everything. Thyron, I think I'm falling in love with you." The words came out like they hurt him, because they probably did. Because every emotion was agony, every feeling was death. "I don't know what love is. I've never felt it before. But I know I think about you constantly. I know I want to protect you. I know that when you walked into this room tonight, something in my chest that isn't the curse came alive." Nerissa was sobbing now. You can't. You can't love me. It will kill you." "Then I'll die having lived," Thyron said simply. "Which is more than any Valdos king has done in 12 generations." He kissed her. It was different from their wedding night. Gentler. More deliberate. Like he was memorizing the taste of her for whatever came after. Nerissa kissed him back desperately, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. "I love you too. I'm sorry. I won't let you die. I'll find a way." When they finally broke apart, the frost on his face had spread further. It was climbing toward his eyes now, threatening to seal them closed. "We need to find a way to break the curse," Nerissa said fiercely. "There has to be something. The witch who cast it, does her line still exist? Is there a counterspell? There must be something we haven't tried." "The witch died centuries ago. Her bloodline ended with her." Thyron's voice was strained. "Every king before me has searched for a cure, none found one. Then I'll find one. I have Luna blood. I can forge and sever bonds. Maybe I can—" A knock at the door interrupted her. "Your Majesties?" A guard's voice, urgent. "A messenger has arrived from Caelmont. He says it's urgent." Nerissa and Thyron exchanged glances. She rose to open the door and the guard handed her a sealed letter. The seal was her mother's. With trembling hands, Nerissa broke it open and read the contents. The blood drained from her face. "What is it?" Thyron asked. "It's from my mother." Nerissa's voice was hollow. "She says she knows how to break your curse. She's known for years." She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of hope and horror. "She wants to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" Nerissa handed him the letter with shaking hands. "She says she'll tell me how to save you, in exchange for something only I can give her. My Luna power. She wants me to transfer my abilities to her. And she wants me to do it within the week, or she'll let you die." Nerissa read the letter 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Her mother knew how to break the curse, had always known, and she'd kept that knowledge hidden while Nerissa married a dying man, while the frost crept toward his heart, while everything fell apart. "She's lying," Nerissa said finally. "She has to be. How could she possibly know how to break a curse that's existed for 12 generations? Thyron took the letter from her hands, his frosted fingers brushing hers. Your mother bound your Luna power when you were a child. That requires significant magical knowledge. Perhaps she learned more than she revealed. But why would she want my power? What use is it to her? The ability to forge and sever mate bonds? Thyron's voice was grim. That power could control entire kingdoms. She could make or break political alliances with a thought. Force enemies to bond with wolves who would destroy them. Sever the bonds of loyal mates to create chaos. Nerissa felt sick. She wants to use it as a weapon. Your mother struck me as the ambitious type when I met her at the auction. Thyron set the letter down. She was angry when you left with me, not protective. Angry, like you'd stolen something from her. I stole myself. Nerissa laughed bitterly. The one thing she thought she owned completely. She moved to the window, staring out at the frozen landscape. The moon hung heavy and full over Valdos, casting silver light across the snow. Somewhere out there, her mother was waiting for an answer, waiting to see if Nerissa loved Thyron enough to sacrifice herself. The answer, she realized, was yes, but that didn't mean she would do it her mother's way. I'm not giving her my power, Nerissa said quietly. Nerissa, if she truly knows how to break the curse, then she'll break it without taking anything from me. Nerissa turned to face him, and the determination in her voice surprised even herself. I've spent my entire life being controlled by that woman. Being told I was weak, ordinary, and worthless. Being fed suppressants that kept my true nature caged. I won't give her the satisfaction of winning now. Thyron studied her with those gray eyes that were slowly being consumed by frost. Even if it means watching me die? You're not going to die. Nerissa crossed to him, taking his frozen hands in hers despite the cold that bit into her skin. I'm going to save you, not by giving away my power, but by using it. You don't know how to use it. Maven said I could sever bonds. Nerissa's grip tightened. She said the first Luna could forge and destroy connections at will. If I can learn to control it, I can sever the bond between us. I can remove whatever connection is making you feel things. No. The word was quiet but absolute. Nerissa blinked. What? I said no. Thyron pulled his hands from hers, stepping back. I don't want you to sever the bond. Thyron, it's killing you. I know. His voice cracked on the words. I know it's killing me. I can feel my heart slowing. I can feel the cold spreading deeper every day. But I also feel you, Nerissa. For the first time in my life, I feel something real. Something worth having. It's not worth your life. That's not your decision to make. He moved toward her, and despite everything, despite the frost claiming his face and the death creeping toward his heart, he smiled. It was small, uncertain, like a muscle that had forgotten how to work. But it was real. I love you, he said simply. I didn't know I was capable of it, but I do. And I would rather die feeling this than live another century feeling nothing. Nerissa's tears came hot and fast, melting against her cheeks. You can't ask me to let you die. You can't ask me to live with that. I'm not asking you to let me die. I'm asking you not to take away the best thing that's ever happened to me. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. Find another way. Break the curse, not the bond. And if you can't, he pressed his forehead against hers. Then let me go knowing I lived. Really lived. Even if it was only for a few weeks. Nerissa sobbed against him, her warm tears tracking paths through the frost on his skin. She could feel the bond between them, that fragile, impossible connection that had formed despite every obstacle. It pulsed with something that felt like love, like completion, like two broken pieces finally finding each other, and it was killing him. I won't accept this, she whispered fiercely. I won't let you die, and I won't let you suffer, and I won't give my mother what she wants. There has to be another way. Then find it. Thyron's lips brushed her forehead. But find it quickly. I don't know how much time I have left. That night, Nerissa didn't sleep. She sat in the castle library surrounded by ancient texts, searching desperately for any mention of the Valdos curse, any hint of how it might be broken. Maven sat across from her, equally exhausted, equally determined. The witch who cast the curse was named Selveth, Maven said, turning pages in a crumbling book. She was one of the most powerful dark practitioners of her era. When King Vareth rejected her, she became obsessed with ensuring no one in his line would ever experience love. Obsession born of heartbreak. Nerissa laughed bitterly. She loved him so much that she cursed 12 generations of his descendants. That's not love. That's madness. Love and madness often wear the same face. Maven paused, her finger hovering over a passage. Wait, this mentions something interesting. Nerissa leaned forward. What? The curse was designed to prevent Valdos kings from forming natural mate bonds. Their wolves were essentially neutered emotionally, but Selveth couldn't completely remove the capacity for connection without killing them outright. Maven's eyes widened. She had to leave a crack, a possibility, in case she ever changed her mind and wanted to undo what she'd done. A failsafe? Of sorts. The curse can only be broken by... Maven trailed off, her face going pale. By what? Nerissa demanded. Maven, tell me. By a love strong enough to survive it. Maven looked up at her. The curse feeds on emotion. It's designed to freeze the heart the moment love takes root. But if the love is stronger than the curse, if it burns hot enough to melt the ice faster than it can spread, then the curse breaks. Theoretically. Maven's voice was heavy with doubt. But no love has ever been strong enough. 12 generations of Valdos kings, and none of them ever felt deeply enough to challenge the curse. The few who started to feel simply died. Nerissa's mind raced. But those kings didn't have someone with Luna blood trying to bond with them. They didn't have someone capable of forging connections that shouldn't exist. I'm suggesting that I don't sever the bond. Nerissa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the stone floor. I strengthen it. I pour everything I have into the connection between us. I make Thyron feel so much, so deeply, that the love burns through the curse before the curse can freeze his heart. Maven stared at her. That's suicide. For both of you. If you're wrong, if the love isn't strong enough, you'll be bonded to him when he dies. The backlash could kill you too. Then I'll die knowing I tried. Nerissa's voice was steady. That's more than I would have had if my mother had sold me into slavery. More than I would have had if Joreth had completed our bond and trapped me in a loveless marriage. Thyron gave me a choice when no one else would. Now I'm choosing him. Before Maven could respond, the library doors burst open. A guard stumbled in, his face white with terror. Your Majesty, the king. He's collapsed. Nerissa ran. She found Thyron in his study, unconscious on the floor, frost covering his entire body now. His skin was blue, his lips nearly black, and when she pressed her hand against his chest, she could barely feel his heartbeat. No. She gathered him in her arms, ignoring the cold that bit into her skin. No, 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 you can't. You promised me time. You promised me... His eyes fluttered open, barely, just slits of gray in a frozen face. Nerissa. Her name came out as a breath, a whisper. I dreamed of you. Stay with me. She was sobbing, her tears falling onto his frozen cheeks. Stay with me, Thyron. I know how to save you. I figured it out. I just need you to hold on. The curse. His voice was fading. It's finishing. No, no, it's not. Nerissa closed her eyes and reached for the power inside her. The Luna bloodline her mother had suppressed for so long. the ability to forge bonds that shouldn't exist. She found it coiled at her core like a sleeping dragon, waiting, ready. "I love you," she said fiercely. "I love you, Thiren of Valdos, and I'm not letting you go." She poured everything she had into the bond between them. The world exploded in light. The last thing she saw was Thiren's face, frozen in shock. Then everything went white. Nerissa opened her eyes to chaos. She was lying on the floor of Thiren's study, her body aching like she'd been struck by lightning. The bond between her and Thiren blazed in her chest, brighter and stronger than anything she'd ever felt. But something was wrong. Thiren lay beside her, still frozen, still barely breathing. The curse hadn't broken. Her desperate attempt to strengthen the bond had done something, had slowed the progression. But it wasn't enough. "You foolish girl," a familiar voice cut through the ringing in her ears. "Did you really think raw power could overcome a curse that's lasted 12 generations? Nerissa forced herself to sit up. Her mother stood in the doorway of the study, flanked by guards wearing Solanthus gold. Aurelion's guards. The castle gates must have been opened during the chaos of Thiran's collapse. Someone had betrayed them. "Mother?" Nerissa's voice was hoarse. "What are you doing here?" "Saving you from your own stupidity." Helene stepped into the room, her expression a mixture of contempt and triumph. "I told you I knew how to break the curse. I told you what I wanted in return. But you had to be stubborn. You had to try doing it yourself." "You're working with Aurelion?" "Obviously." Helene waved a dismissive hand. "Did you think Jorith rejected you on his own? That boy was obsessed with you. It took months of manipulation, of convincing him that Linessa was his true mate, of feeding him potions that dulled his bond with you. All so that when the 3 kings arrived looking for the Luna-blooded woman our family had kept hidden, you would be conveniently available." The truth hit Nerissa like a physical blow. "You planned all of it. The rejection, the auction, everything." "I planned to sell you to Aurelion." Helene's face twisted with old fury. "He offered me a fortune for a woman with your bloodline. But then you chose the frozen corpse instead, and I had to adjust my approach." "You're my mother." Nerissa couldn't keep the anguish from her voice. "How could you—" "You're not my daughter." The words came out cold and flat. "You're your father's mistake, a constant reminder that he loved his mistress more than me. When your wolf manifested Luna abilities, I realized you were even more valuable than I'd thought. But I wasn't about to let a half-blood bastard have power that should have been mine." The final piece fell into place. "I'm not your biological daughter," Nerissa said slowly. "That's why you've always hated me. That's why Linessa was always your favorite. Linessa is my blood. You're just the brat your father forced me to raise." Helene smiled cruelly. "But your Luna bloodline came from somewhere, your real mother's family. Which means if I drain it from you, I'll have what should have been mine all along." "She won't help you." Thiren's voice was weak, barely audible, but his eyes had opened. "Whatever you threaten, whatever you offer, Nerissa won't give you her power." "Oh, she will." Helene nodded to Aurelion's guards. "Because if she doesn't, I'll have her precious cold king executed right here. His guards are loyal, but they're no match for Aurelion's forces." Nerissa looked at Thiran, at the frost consuming his body, at the love still burning in his dying eyes. He'd chosen her when she was nothing. He'd given her freedom when everyone else wanted to cage her. He'd learned to feel, to love, just for her. She couldn't let him die, but she couldn't let her mother win either. "How do you know how to break the curse?" Nerissa asked quietly. "How could you possibly know something that's been lost for 12 generations?" "Because I've spent 20 years studying bond magic to understand your power." Helene's smile widened. "When I researched how to bind your abilities, I learned everything about how bonds work, including how the Valdos curse was constructed, and, more importantly, the key to breaking it. Tell me. Give me your power first. No. Nerissa stood, her legs unsteady but her voice firm. You'll tell me how to break the curse and then you'll leave, or I'll burn this entire castle down around all of us. Fire erupted from her hands. She remembered the flames surging in her chambers days ago, responding to her emotions. Luna Bloodline was about bonds, about connections, about life force itself. And when pushed far enough, when all that suppressed energy had nowhere else to go, it became destruction. The flames danced around her fingers, golden and hungry. Helene stumbled backward, genuine fear crossing her face for the first time. That's impossible. Your power is about bonds, not... Bonds are energy. Maven's voice came from a side doorway. The old woman had been watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. Her expression was grim but satisfied. When you forge or sever a bond, you're manipulating life force itself. Nerissa has been suppressed her entire life. All that power had to go somewhere. The transfer, Nerissa said slowly, understanding dawning. When I tried to strengthen my bond with Thyrin, I didn't just pour my love into him. I poured everything. All the power that's been building inside me for 20 years. And power that strong, released that fast, creates fire. Maven stepped fully into the room. It's why Luna-blooded wolves were so feared in ancient times. They could forge a bond, then burn it, using the energy to incinerate their enemies. Helene had gone pale. You can't control that power. You'll kill us all. Maybe. Nerissa advanced on her mother, flames licking higher around her arms. Or maybe I'll just kill you. Tell me how to break the curse. Now. For a long moment, Helene said nothing. The guards behind her shifted nervously, clearly reconsidering their loyalty in the face of a woman wreathed in fire. Fine. Helene's voice was bitter with defeat. The curse can only be broken by completing what Selveth started. She cursed the Valdos line because Varith rejected her love. The only way to undo it is for a Valdos king to fully accept love, to bond completely and irrevocably with another wolf. I tried that. It didn't work. Because you were trying to strengthen the bond while fighting the curse. Helene's lip curled. You can't do both. You have to surrender to it. Stop trying to save him. Stop trying to control the outcome. Just love him. Completely. Without reservation, without fear. Nerissa stared at her. That's it? That's the great secret? Just love him? Love him and accept that you might die too. Helene's voice was cold. The curse exists because Selveth couldn't accept rejection. It can only be broken by accepting love without conditions, without the guarantee of survival, without knowing if it will work, without fear. Nerissa turned to look at Thiran. He was watching her through frost-covered eyes, his breathing shallow, and his heartbeat so faint she could barely sense it through their bond. She'd been so afraid of losing him that she hadn't let herself fully feel what she felt. She'd held back, tried to protect herself, tried to find a way to save him without risking everything. But love wasn't safe. Love was terrifying. Love was choosing someone even when you might lose them. She let the fire die. Then she crossed to Thyrin and knelt beside him, pulling his frozen body into her arms. I love you, she said softly. Not because you're a king, not because you saved me, not because the bond tells me to. I love you because you're the first person who ever saw me, really saw me. And if loving you means dying with you, then that's what I'll do. She kissed him. The cold was agonizing. It bit into her lips, her face, and her hands. She felt the frost trying to spread to her, trying to claim her too. She didn't care. She poured everything she had into the kiss. Every ounce of love, of hope, of desperate longing. She opened the bond between them completely, holding nothing back, letting him feel exactly how much he meant to her. And she felt him respond. Weak at first, then stronger. his emotions, newly born after a lifetime of nothing, reaching for hers. Fear, wonder, gratitude. And beneath it all, blazing like a sun hidden under ice, love. The frost began to crack. It started at his lips, where her warmth met his cold. Then it spread, fractures racing across his frozen face, down his neck, across his chest. The ice shattered and fell away, revealing living flesh beneath. His heart began to beat stronger. His lungs filled with air. His arms, no longer frozen, came up to wrap around her. Nerissa. His voice was hoarse but strong. You did it. We did it. She was crying and laughing at the same time. We broke the curse. Behind them, Helene made a sound of fury. This is impossible. The curse was absolute. It was designed to be unbreakable. It was designed to be broken by love. Maven's voice was satisfied. Selveth just never believed anyone in the Valdos line would be capable of it. She underestimated what a cold king could feel when he found the right woman. Thyron rose to his feet, keeping Nerissa close against his side. The frost was completely gone now. His skin was warm, pink with rushing blood, alive in a way it had never been. Guards, he said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. Arrest Lady Helene of Caelmont for conspiracy, attempted murder, and treason against the crown of Valdos. His guards, who had been waiting for their king to either die or command them, surged forward. Aurelion's men, clearly outmatched and unwilling to fight for a losing cause, stood aside. Helene struggled as they bound her hands. You can't do this. I'm a noblewoman of Caelmont. I have rights. You have nothing. Nerissa stepped forward, her voice cold and steady. You're not my mother. You never were. And when the courts hear what you've done, not just to me, but to my father's true mate, to the woman you helped destroy to hide your jealousy, you'll be lucky if prison is all you get. Helene's face went white. How did you? I felt everything when the bond opened fully. Nerissa's eyes were hard. Every secret you've kept. Every crime you've committed. Including what really happened to the woman my father loved. The woman who gave birth to me before you drove her away and claimed me as your own. The guards dragged Helene away, her screams echoing through the corridors. In the silence that followed, Thyron turned to Nerissa and cradled her jaw in his warm hands. You saved me, he said softly. You saved me first. She leaned into his touch. That night in Caelmont when you chose me, you gave me something I'd never had before. What? Hope. He kissed her, and this time there was no cold, no curse, no fear. Just warmth and love and the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. 6 months later, the great hall of Valdos had never been so warm. Spring had come to the frozen kingdom, and with it, changes that no one had thought possible. The eternal winter that had gripped the land for generations was softening, the snow receding, the first flowers pushing through the thawing ground. The curse, it seemed, hadn't just affected the kings. It had frozen the entire kingdom in its grip. And when it broke, everything began to heal. Nerissa stood at the window of the royal chambers, watching the sun set over a landscape of green and gold. Her hand rested on the swell of her belly, where new life was growing. You're thinking too hard. Thyron's arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. I can feel it through the bond. She smiled. The bond between them had only grown stronger since the curse broke. They could sense each other's emotions, share thoughts when they concentrated. It was intimate in ways she'd never imagined. I'm thinking about everything that's changed, she admitted. 6 months ago, I was on my knees watching my fated mate mark my sister. Now I'm queen of Valdos, carrying the heir to a throne that was cursed for 12 generations. And breaking that curse for every generation to come. Thyron pressed a kiss to her temple. Our children will feel, they'll love. They'll know warmth instead of emptiness. Our children. She turned in his arms, looking up at the face that had once been carved from ice and now smiled freely. I still can't quite believe it. Believe it. He kissed her softly. You made it real. All of it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Maven entered, her expression lighter than Nerissa had ever seen it. Your Majesties, you have visitors. Nerissa raised an eyebrow. Visitors? The door opened wider and two figures stepped through. Gidrin, the warrior king, looked almost uncomfortable in formal clothing instead of battle leathers, and beside him, to Nerissa's shock, Linessa? Her sister's face was thinner than she remembered, her eyes shadowed with grief and guilt. The mark on her neck, Jorith's mark, was still visible, but something about it seemed faded. Sister. Linessa's voice cracked. I came to beg your forgiveness. Nerissa glanced at Thyrin, who squeezed her hand supportively. What happened? Nerissa asked quietly. Jorith. Linessa swallowed hard. When the truth about Mother came out, when everyone learned what she'd done, he couldn't handle it. He tried to blame me, then he tried to blame you. Then he just ran. Left in the middle of the night. Her eyes filled with tears. He's broken our bond, rejected me the same way he rejected you. There was a time when Nerissa would have felt satisfaction at this news, vindication, justice. Instead, she felt only pity. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. You didn't deserve that. I deserve worse. Linessa fell to her knees. I knew what Mother was doing. Not all of it, but enough. I was jealous of you, Nerissa. Jealous that Joreth looked at you the way he never looked at me. I let Mother convince me that you were the problem. That if you were gone, everything would be perfect. It wasn't your fault. Mother manipulated all of us. I should have seen through it. I should have protected you instead of competing with you. Linessa looked up, her face streaked with tears. Can you ever forgive me? Nerissa knelt down to her sister's level. I forgave you the moment I broke the curse. Holding on to anger doesn't serve anyone. She took Linessa's hands. We're sisters. Real sisters. And that means something. Even if we didn't come from the same mother. Linessa sobbed and threw her arms around her. When the embrace ended, Gidrin cleared his throat awkwardly. Escorted Lady Linessa here from Kaelmont, he said. Thought she might need protection on the road. Nerissa noticed the way his eyes lingered on her sister, the way Linessa's scent carried traces of his, the way they stood just a little too close together. How kind of you, Nerissa said, hiding a smile. I was in the area, Gidrin muttered, clearly lying. Thyrin caught her eye and smirked. She felt his amusement through the bond, mixed with something warm and satisfied. Later that night, after the visitors had been shown to their rooms and the castle had gone quiet, Nerissa stood on the balcony with her husband, watching the stars emerge over the kingdom that was finally, truly theirs. Do you remember what you said to me that first night? She asked. When you offered me the contract? I said I would never love you. Thyrin's voice was soft with wonder. I said I was incapable of it. And now? He turned her to face him, his hands warm and gentle on her shoulders. The man who had once been made of ice now burned with more love than she'd ever thought possible. Now I can't imagine existing without you, he said. Every breath I take is for you. Every heartbeat is because of you. You didn't just break my curse, Nerissa. You broke me open and filled me with something I didn't know I was missing. Tears pricked at her eyes. I love you. I love you more. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and her lips. I will love you for every day we have together. I will love you with every ounce of feeling I was denied for 30 years. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing a cold king who didn't know how to be warm. Nerissa laughed through her tears. I chose you because you were cold. I stayed because you learned to be warm. Then stay forever. Forever, she promised. The moon rose over Valdos, silver and full, blessing the king and queen who had broken a 12-generation curse with nothing but love. And in the distance, spring flowers bloomed where eternal winter had once reigned, a reminder that even the coldest hearts could learn to feel, that even the most broken wolves could find their way home. That love, when it was real, when it was true, when it was chosen without fear, could melt any ice, could break any curse, could save anyone. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more tales of fated mates, cursed kings, and loves that defy destiny, make sure to subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. Your words mean more than you know. Until next time.